One of the biggest differences, I think, for me over the years has been the evolution of technology. Just the technology exists today compared to when I started. There wasn't really an internet then. There were no PCs sitting on people's desks. As an electronics technician repairing PC boards, there wasn't anything but a toolkit and an oscilloscope and maybe a meter to read voltages and things like that. We eventually got alphanumeric terminals connected to a mainframe or a mini computer, and then eventually we started getting the Interpro 32 and more desktop. And I remember there's seemed to be a real reluctance within the company to move to PCs, and eventually, obviously, we did. But now it's evolved to the point now to where your desk is really wherever you're sitting because you have a laptop. Everybody has laptops now. So that's the most striking thing, is just the evolution of technology, I think, over the years. Compared to today, with all the information we deal with from moment to moment and day to day, we dealt with very little information in those days because we didn't know how much information was out there and available to us.
I started out in 1982 in accounting, and we were in Building 9, and back then Intergraph was all over everywhere. The biggest thing is although we were a computer company, the accounting group did not use computers to do our accounting. We used the old ledger books, and we would tag team and balance each ledger with a team because our VP did not trust computers.
I remember the very first day when we walked into an empty office room, and there, no furniture, but there on the floor were 2 NASA RFPs, a couple of tablets, and a bunch of pencils, so we could start writing proposals even though we didn't have a desk to write on. February 10th, 1969. We used to have a every other Friday night poker game, and a couple of the IBM managers would come play poker with us on Friday night, and that's how we'd keep up with what was going on at IBM and the people that we wanted to get from there. When we started, we were a little company. We wanted to do big things. We and never could have imagined that we had at one time 10,500 employees around the world in 40 countries. NASA wanted to get a graphics system, and they sent us out on the road to review the products that were there. And as Medlock said, we didn't think we could screw it up any worse than those guys had. The Saturn launch vehicle had the most modern computer of the day, but it was still very, very limited capability. So we had to do a lot of simulations on the ground in order to program the computer to get the right data, right parameters into the equations in the computer. And after the first 2 minutes, the simulated missile would blow up, but it took till the next day to find out, what had happened. So we started developing an interactive graphics capability that let us run them and then watch the trajectory as the simulation ran the missile, the Saturn, through its trajectories. And if it started going off course, we just stopped it right there and interactively entered new parameters for another simulation, and we were able to do in a day what had taken weeks before. That was the very beginning of us doing interactive graphics. I mean, we were the darlings of the NASA engineers, technical folks at NASA. It was a scary process is what it was, because it took us from February 10th to October 27th to get a contract. Summers in college, I worked with Sectronics. And I loved hearing the stories about Howard Vollum and his partner starting out in Howard's garage and building what became a very, very successful company. And I decided then and there that I was going to graduate from college. I was going to go to work for a big company. I was going to learn a lot about how to run a company. Then I was going to go to work for a little company and use those skills and help that little company grow into a big one. As a matter of fact, we delayed starting the company to make sure that my second child was born and healthy, and if anything went wrong, the IBM insurance would cover it.
Tell me about this biscuit man that used to be here at Intergraph.
The biscuit man, all right. Intergraph had 2 cafeterias, remember?
Yeah.
And every day he went around to all the buildings with a cart
Yeah.
with biscuits, probably bagels too. But he visited every building, and everyone could go out. There was usually a line in front of his cart, and everyone. He did such a good job, and he was committed. He always went to every building, make sure everyone who wanted breakfast had breakfast.
We used to have iGov, and it used to be at the Von Braun Civic Center for an entire week. We had brought our own desktop computers or servers, but the IT had provided the monitors. And so we were finished doing our presentation, and we was done for the day. And so they had bundled up all these cables, to the computer. They had these zip ties, and it was real thick. The guy I was working with had a pocket knife, and I had a pocket knife. And dummy me, I was cutting one of those zip ties, and I cut, and I still have my mark on my finger. It cut it right to the bone. When it hits me, I can feel it. It's almost like I keep, my vision starts getting blurry, and I can hear this almost like I'm sitting by the seashore. So I knew, I said, man, this is gonna be embarrassing if I pass out. It put me on the floor, and I was out. I had passed out, but I could hear people talking. And so all the customers, they had another presentation going on right beside our presentation. And so I could hear the customers looking around, what's wrong with it? Blah, blah, blah. Instead of looking at the presentation, they was asking questions about me. I could hear all this. You could tell everybody was talking about it. I asked, what happened to him? What was wrong with him? And then they thought, oh, he cut his finger? Did he cut it off? No, he didn't cut it off. He just cut it. It bled. And he passed out, Oh God, man. I'm sure I was the butt of a lot of jokes that I didn't hear myself,
My favorite job was keeping us out of trouble. Jim would send me out to a customer when a customer had threatened to sue us, and I would negotiate some kind of deal where we wouldn't get sued, and it was always a lot of fun. Working for Jim and talking to Jim was always interesting because unless you didn't know him, you understood that he was going to challenge you at every idea. If you walked in there with a plan or you walked in there with a deal, he'd always say no. And he did that because he wanted to see how much background you had, how much you were committed to that deal. If you argued with him, he'd probably agree with it. But you had to know that, and not everybody knew that. So anyway, I had a particularly bad customer, and it was a rather expensive customer. And I walked in there with a letter all typed out. This is what we're giving you, and for no charge, and this is this, so and so on. Signed, Jim Medlock, President, Intergraph Corporation. Jim looked at the letter, threw it off on the floor, and said, I'm not signing that letter. I said, okay. So that's the best deal I can get out of him. I mean, you know that. That's all we're going to get. I'm not signing that letter. I said, okay. So I just picked up the letter, and I just stood there in front of his desk. About 10 minutes later, he said, you're not going to leave till I sign that letter, are you? I said, nope. He said, give it to me. But that's what you had to do with Jim to make things work.
In the younger years, and I'm looking out the window to see the softball fields, that was a big thing for a lot of us as young people coming up in the company. At one point we were 3,000 to 5,000 employees, so there was a lot of softball activity. So that became a real social scene over there during the weeknights because there were games there every night. And through that, developed a lot of friendships and still have some of those friends today. And it wasn't just the employees, it was a family thing. I mean, wives and children and husbands and everybody, we were all out there playing softball and having a grand time. There might have been an adult beverage or two consumed during that time. It evolved into people would start recruiting. So you wanted to get the best team. Yeah, I probably played on 3 or 4 teams over the several years that we played. But it wasn't just with us. We also played in the leagues around Huntsville. A lot of the bigger firms in Huntsville had teams as well. So very competitive. We took it very seriously. We all thought we were in the major league.